Dann Huff studio legend, sort of in that post-Steve Lukather vein in terms of the session scene in LA and then Nashville in the 80s. He's a massive producer now, but he's all over Shania Twain's Come On Over album as a, sort of an A-list guitar player. And he does the solo on You're Still the One. So we're going to look at that today from sort of his tone, his use of chord tones, his phrasing and all sorts of those sorts of things. It's only 4 bars long or so, but it is really an amazing, amazing guitar solo. Okay, we're in standard tuning key of A major. Let's start with the first bit. Okay, guitar tone-wise, I'm using a Kemper Profile, a 72 Marshall with a tube screamer in the front, a little bit of compression just for some sustain, and of course some reverb and delay. So it gives you something like this. Okay, the chords, 1 bar of each, chord 1, chord 6, chord 4 and chord 5. As I said, we're in the key of A major, so we're looking at an A major chord, F sharp minor chord, D major chord, and an E major chord. Now that is really essential. Dan seamlessly puts this together, as if it's improvised off the cuff, and it probably was. But I guarantee you, he had chords in his subconscious. He probably, I don't know if he was specifically thinking, let's hit a third here and a fifth here and a tonic here. But that's basically what he did. He probably used his ears because he's been doing it so long. So the chords themselves are A major, F sharp minor, D major, E major. All right, so why are chord tones so important? Well, they are the notes that make up what you're playing on top of. So if you match what you're playing in a solo line or lead line to the chords you're playing on top of, it has a certain sound, and it's going to sound very, very pleasing, and you can have tension, you can have release. When you couple that with your phrasing, your rhythm, your slides, your vibrato, all those sort of things, that's where the magic happens. So interesting thing about this, it starts on beat 4 of that first bar of the solo. So Dan has allowed sort of that string line, that sort of motif that they're doing underneath to set up the solo. Okay, so he's on chord, the A chord, chord 1, and he comes in on beat 4. Now, where's he going? He's going to chord 6, which is F sharp minor. Now, there are some similar notes in those two chords, primarily the A and the C sharp. So it's the tonic and the third from the 1 chord, the A, and it's a third and the 5th from the F sharp minor chord. So that first line that he does. Okay, so he slides up to the A, which is the chord we're on, and then he will slide the E, which is the 5th of A, up to F sharp, and then bend a B up to a C sharp on the G string, okay? Okay, now that C sharp is the third of the A chord. It's a really, really strong sound. But by the time he hits that, they were moving to the F sharp minor chord. And C sharp is the 5th degree of there. So he's using a common chord tone there to thread between those two chords. Okay, now the next part, he's holding that C sharp note again and really comes in on beat 4 of the F sharp chord. So from a rhythm perspective and a timing perspective, there's some similarities there already. And, you're not thinking about that when you're hearing it, but when you break it down, it's interesting to see, again, how he's put this solo together. Okay, so we're on the C sharp on the F sharp chord there. Okay, now where's he going now? He's going to the 4 chord, which is the D chord. And now there are similarities there. In that the F sharp and A, which is in the F sharp minor chord, you go into the D chord, F sharp and A is in that chord, it's the 3rd degree and the 5th degree, so he's got some similarities there. So the next line. Okay, so he's going to bend down that C sharp and sort of slide down into a G sharp, bend it up to the A and hit the F sharp. A and F sharp. Those are those two chord tones from the F sharp minor and where you're going the D major that are similar there. So it fits beautifully. Okay, so we're going to E major now, the 5 chord. Now the 5 is such a strong chord. It's that 5-1 cadence, that plagal cadence, I think it's called. Anyway, it really has a strong pull back to the 1 chord, the A, and that's when the vocal comes in again. So you sort of want to crescendo that solo, and that's what Dan does. He goes to the highest notes in the solo. But let's see how he puts that in. So again, we've gone to the E chord, and we're just from the D to the E, we're sitting on that F sharp. So we go to the E, and then on the 1 and, so he changes the rhythm a little bit here. He's starting on beat 4, then beat 4. And now we're on sort of 1 and. Okay, then E major, we're on there. Now, if you think of that D chord shape, major chord shape, up at E, up here, that's what you're thinking there. So it's 16, 16, or 16, 17, 16. That D chord shape up here is an E major triad. We're on an E chord. So he slides up to the B, does a bend up just for some tension, and then hits the E, outlining exactly an E triad. We're on an E chord there. So every one of the 3 notes in that chord, he hits in his solo beautifully. Okay, so that bit there, what he's doing, as I said, he's going up the E triad there, but the phrasing there is ridiculous. So he'll bend up the G sharp on that high E string to the E, bend it down, and then bend it up again from the A to the B, which is in the E chord. Okay, that there is just amazing. Now, he's going to hit the E again and bend up from the B. E and B are in the E chord, but we're going to the A chord. So he bends the B up to a C sharp. Okay, and we've gone to a C sharp. So he's resolving it there, coming out of the notes in an E chord to the C sharp that's in the A chord. So kind of a lot of theory there in terms of chord tones there, but it's a sort of a snapshot into the brilliance of these session players, or any player, don't have to be a session player, but anyone who's really thinking about chord tones. And as I said before, they're probably not thinking about chord tones as such anymore. Their ears are doing all the work. But if you break it down, that's exactly what's happening. Now, his phrasing, as I said, is just impeccable. It's not a fast solo from a technical perspective, but it's actually difficult to play with the slides and the bends, to play it the way he does it. So anyway, take a look. Hope you enjoyed that one. See you next time.